Good, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Institute of Hospitality's CPD webinar this afternoon, and our first one of 2023. So a very happy new year to you all. Delighted to be welcomed by an expert panel who will introduce themselves to you in a moment. But before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items to remind you about. First of all, this session is being recorded, so it will be available on the Institute's website after today for you to be able to go back and catch up on anything that you might have missed, or you want to revisit some of the discussion points. But also, if you're wanting to refer back to this at a later date, it'll be there for you as well on the on-demand platform on the Institute's website. We also have a question and answer facility, so if you do have questions throughout the discussion, please do pop them into the discussion box on your screen in the chat function, and we'll get to some of those questions at the end, towards the end of our time together today. And lastly, just to remind you that this does count towards your CPD hours. So please make sure you record this on the website and your Institute's portal as a CPD session, where you can record this hour as well. So without further ado, today's subject is hospitality finance planning. And it's a good time to look at finances as we begin a new calendar year, but also head into a new financial year for many people from April. And finances in the news a lot lately, with the cost of living, with labour, energy, food, high inflation, costs all on the rise for us individually as individual citizens, but also the businesses that we work in are also affected by some of these challenges, if not all of them. So delighted to be joined by three experts from revenue management and the world of finance today, Deborah, Michael and Olga. So thank you very much for your time today, and I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourselves as we go round the room, who you are, what you do, the usual thing, but a little bit about your relationship with the Institute as well would be good just to kick things off. So Deborah, if I could start with you, please.
Thank you very much, Sam. So I'm thrilled to be on the panel today. My name is Deborah Adams. I'm the founder of Arena for Finance, which is a training consultancy specialising in training and education for the hospitality industry. We work with lots of different companies, training HODs, GMs, to help them to understand their profit and loss, as well as cash flows and all the financial data that goes with hospitality reporting. I've been involved with IoH for many years, and I'm very honoured at the moment to be on the supervisory board and really enjoying my role and having some involvement in the strategic direction of the association.
Brilliant, thank you, Deborah. And Olga?
Good afternoon, I'm Olga Sommer. I have just joined a new company, Crimson Hotels, as cluster revenue manager looking after Trafalgar St James Hotel and also 100 Queensgate Hotel. My both property are Hilton Collection. My previous experience included opening of 3 properties, so new openings. The most recent one was Noble Portman Square. Before that, Hamyard Hotel and the Biltmore Mayfair. I have been working for privately owned small hotel groups and as well as international hotel chains. And main experience is managing revenue in Mayfair and London properties, and I've been doing that for over 10 years. Been involved with the Institute of Hospitality for a number of years. Thank you very much for inviting me to the panel. And over the last couple of years, maybe during pandemic, I wasn't as much involved, but I would like to start the year giving back more to the industry, as I think we work absolutely fantastic industry.
Brilliant, thank you, Olga. And Michael?
Yeah, great to be on this webinar with you. My background, as you can tell from the name on here, my association is with HOSPA. HOSPA delivers courses in finance, revenue management, and now asset management, and endorsed by the Institute of Hospitality. I'm also working with Glion, the Swiss Hotel School, on their London campus. Deborah and I both do some work there, and it's something where the students have been quite involved with the IoH as well. So a few different connections there. My background is in RM, similar to Olga, at the revenue management side, but also in my time when I was with IHG on the franchise support side as well. And I've been running my own company for the past 7 years, and we focus on the people side of the business. So revenue management, finance is all fantastic, but really the best results you achieve as a revenue manager is when you're really effective in the way you work with others. That collaboration and communication side is really key. So we do leadership development programs. We do courses in the rail industry as well, not just in hotels. And we recently, with our work we're doing with HOSPA, delivered a new vacation rental revenue management course that's been delivered and developed in partnership with Aways. So it's a new part of our industry that we're providing education into. And the overlaps with finance are pretty clear. The way revenue management is going is beyond just gross room revenue. You have to understand profit. So I think that's what brings the four of us together today.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Michael. And that leads us nicely on to our discussion today. So what we're looking to do today is try and give like a broad theme of information and advice around managing finances, minimizing costs, identifying income streams and cost centers, looking at ways of reducing waste and loss. But I think we probably need to start with, you know, the headline stuff that's coming out at the moment, like I mentioned it earlier, about these rising costs of labour, energy, food, and high inflation. I think has a underlining effect on all of that way that businesses are managing finance. So, Deborah, maybe if I could come to you first, just to give us a bit of an overview of what you're seeing, how businesses are managing that, and any advice that you can give and your feelings on it, really.
Thank you, Sam. Well, as you've identified, there are some really extreme pressure points on the P&L at the moment. Inflation, of course, so we're looking at double-digit inflation in the UK, but as many of our listeners will know, food inflation is probably running much higher than the figure that's often quoted for inflation. So, you know, for many items, up to 20% increase in food costs. And then coupled with energy costs, and we know that the government has given some help to the industry, but that's possibly now coming to an end. So we've got an additional challenge there as well. The shortage of labour, of course, is driving up labour costs as well. And then, of course, interest rates, which are impacting on those businesses that are funded with loans. So you may be at the moment locked into a fixed rate, but that will come to an end, and we'll see that jump there in the interest rates as well. So a lot of pressure on the profit and loss account. We know that during 2022, we've seen in many areas a bounce back, so growth in revenues following the pandemic, which obviously is very, very well received. But as we go into 2023, we are faced with quite a lot of uncertainty in terms of how the hospitality industry will be impacted by the potential of recession, or depending on what report you read, we are in recession, as to how that's going to impact on the industry in the months ahead. So I think the key, and many businesses will be doing this already, but if you're not, then the key is really to make sure that every item in that P&L has to justify itself. So look at your costs, by department, then break them down into what's fixed and what's variable. Variable costs are those costs that you incur because of a particular activity. So that's the food on the plate, the drink in the glass, the cost of cleaning a room. Those are all variable costs. So for everything you sell, you need to really make sure that you have a standard cost for each of those activities. You know how much it's costing you to deliver those products and services. And then, of course, in the hospitality industry, you have a lot of fixed costs. But just because they're fixed, it doesn't mean that you can't change them. So, it's looking at how to try to reduce those fixed costs as well. But of course, many of your listeners will have been doing this because during the pandemic, the first thing we had to do was look at our fixed costs to see how we could bring those down to in order to lower the break-even point. So, a lot of those things have been going on over the last couple of years, but I'm afraid, it's still continuing. We've still got to keep on looking at that P&L and really making sure every cost justifies itself.
And Michael, would you add anything to what Deborah's saying there?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think that's a really great starting point, a foundation point. But I'd say at the moment, just be really careful about understanding what's going on behind the numbers. And Deborah makes a great point when she's talking about payroll. We know payroll is one of our biggest costs. And we know that the cost, the amount we pay people has gone up, but we're also in most places short-staffed. So you may be looking at your payroll cost percentage and say, well, it's not too bad, but you're desperately understaffed. So what happens and how do you play that out once you get to a point where you're more fully staffed? That may create more pressure on your payroll cost percentage. Similarly, on the top line, your mix of business can be creating a bit of confusion about what's happening with your average rate. One of the things we know is that the last markets to come back are some of the lowest yielding markets. So to give you an example, in a market like London, we haven't really had large numbers of wholesale inbound business coming from places like China, and that's very low rate. So once that business plugs back in, your average rate comes down without any change to your pricing. So it's a similar pressure. Understand what's going on behind the numbers. Same as payroll, but this time on the top line. So really do listen to what's going on, understand what's happening in the business, and understand the connection between that and the numbers so that you can anticipate the issues that are coming down the line towards you and manage accordingly.
That's really good, Michael. And Olga, that really leads nicely onto you, because you look at the money coming in mainly, don't you, rather than the cost. So as in revenue management, what are you seeing? Is it still late bookings? Is it late cancellations? What sort of thing are you seeing that's affecting the revenue coming in?
All of that, and I can relate to what Deborah mentioned and Michael, both of them. As Deborah already mentioned, it's about really looking at efficiencies across all departments, and I think it should be linked to incentivized to all employees. Really, it should be part of the package, really, because it's us as individuals can make those little changes that will change the whole picture. And I've seen a number of examples recently where the hotels, if they have several F&B outlets, they were looking to reduce their hours, maybe keep the restaurant running just for the breakfast service, but then close in quietest months for lunch and dinner because of the costs involved. Again, I think we should be really careful discussing, reducing all the costs, because the investment is also, it's important that we still continue making investments to the business and we keep the product still standard, etc., because otherwise it will catch up with us later on. So it's something to kind of bear in mind as well. Other examples would be reducing what's again Deborah mentioned in terms of what's on the menu. Do we need to have something added to the M&E and wedding contracts? Because some of the agreements are a year ahead, for example. We don't know how certain items how the inflation will impact that. So ideally, we want to give some flexibility to chefs to use obviously the best ingredients in the season, to give them flexibility to be creative, but also to look what is actually will be effective, and so to have that kind of flexibility as well. One of the good examples I also came across, it was in Fremdal Hotels, that every single year the Fremdal Hotels were running personal development programs, and everyone on the program at the end of the year would present to stakeholders their ideas. Because they were within the business, they knew kind of their areas so well, and every single year the company was introducing so many great ideas. It's just one of the examples how we should be really involving everyone in the business to improve that, because it will impact overall the results, and it's a small margins that right now will make a huge difference. Also another example of could we look into, because of the staff shortages, could we look at possibly one person but supporting different departments, because we have those individuals who have worked in several departments. Because of the staff shortage, Could we potentially look at some of those, kind of roles being more flexible, or is look kind of balancing work-life balance? Could we look at one role being supported by 2 part-timers? Do we need to have office as much as we had in the past? I'm not so sure, because again, we could be doing hot desking and saving companies some money as well. So a number of ideas, a number of options that hotels are already implementing.
And
just to pick up on a point that Olga made there about planning ahead, and one of the biggest challenges, particularly for the meetings and events department, is how are costs going to change over the next 12 months if you're taking a wedding for July of this year, but what about July of next year, of 2024? And that's the big challenge at the moment in terms of how do you pitch the cost of the food and the cost of the event, and clearly your customers will want to know those prices. So really, looking at what is the true cost of all of these activities, and then how to predict how those costs might change in the year ahead.
I can add something as well. It goes back to the point of communication as well. We don't need even to go as far as a year back, but let's say most of the hotels do write budgets in Q4. And let's say for Q1, we were expecting to be running maybe at 70% occupancy. Right now, January is looking for some hotels in London over 90%. Now, that is a huge difference. And that was just a difference within 3-4 months. How do we communicate that to operational teams, to general managers? How do we change then payroll? And yes, we're doing forecast on the weekly basis, and that communication is changing as well. Instead of having in the past one big meeting once a month, we are now having multiple calls within even 1 week. Perfect example, I was looking after a hotel in Glasgow, and I wouldn't go to the property. I was based still here in London. And we would have calls pretty much on a daily basis. So we were able to make the changes to the business much short lead, and it was working perfectly fine as well.
There's lots there, which is really good. I really like the idea of trying to find solutions and amongst ourselves in the teams that we work with, because his hospitality's got a real good history of finding solutions, whether that's being more green and sustainable, or whether that's saving money. Lots of these ideas can come up from across the business, which is great. Michael, how can we harness that better? How can we pull that out of our teams without them feeling like they're going on a finance course, and they find out something else to do that's a little bit more exciting maybe? How can we harness that?
You're not saying that finance courses aren't exciting, Sam.
Exactly.
Attendance today really shows you how much interest there is in this webinar. So definitely not another exciting, and sometimes we all know people find other things to do rather than look at this situation.
I think we all realize if you get finance wrong, it gets very exciting in a way you don't really want very quickly. There's a couple of things that I think, especially Deborah and I are seeing at the moment. One is people are really understanding they need to know more about how things work. I think most operators now feel like they need to understand their owner's perspective better than they ever did before. We went into all of this lockdown. Sam, if I'd said to you in 2019 that our industry was basically going to close the doors for 2 years, and pretty much everybody, the vast majority of businesses, will successfully come out the other side of that, you would have probably told me that that's mathematically impossible. It just can't happen. And there's a bunch of senior finance people who I talked to who've just said, the resilience of our industry is quite amazing. And that's partly because the real estate investors didn't see it as being in their best interest to kick operators out. You've got a good operator. We all know what's going on. It's not your fault. The business will come back, and I want the best operator running it. But what you really need is an understanding from both sides. And I think the most successful businesses coming out of this is where there's been an openness and a collaboration. So a lot of those human skills that I was talking about. And it's exactly, I know Olga and I are very much aligned on this from an RM point of view. The most successful revenue managers are the ones who have that curiosity of wanting to understand more deeply how the rest of the business works. And that means not just from inside the business out, but also from the customers and the outside in. So the breadth and depth of understanding that you now need to be able to be on top of what's going on in your business. It's all changing so much. We were talking about M&E, lead time, pickup, pace, understanding of all of that, making sure, if Deborah's my financial controller, that she knows the sensitivity around the forecast that I'm giving her, so that when I pick up the phone to her and I say, just chuck it in the bin, stuff's changed, here's what's happening, we can work together on that. And she knows I'm not just doing that for the fun of it. But I'm sure Olga's experienced some of this as well over the past couple of years, being asked, feeling like you're being asked to reforecast every other day. And there was one senior revenue exec who basically said to his C-level, my team are not being involved in any more reforecasts and any more budgets. We need to concentrate on what's happening in the business, not just rehash something we know will be in the garbage in 48 hours time. So that's a really tough balancing act, but at the heart of it is a couple of key things: understanding your business and having that curiosity of trying to work out why things are happening. And the other big one is having those human skills, those human business relationships, foundationally on trust. So that's,
and Michael, what
it's
is
easy
it?
to say it quickly. It's not so easy to do it.
No, exactly. So what is it that information is needed by? What do they need? Those senior leaderships in a timely manner, that obviously they then need to report back to owners, investors, other key stakeholders. What is it that, people that are on the call today, that maybe students, maybe junior hospitality managers, that would help your job if they could provide you with what key information do you need to be able to put that package together?
I'll give you one answer. Look forward. Too many of us at difficult times get caught in this hamster wheel of justifying what's already happened. Where you can impact the business, and this is in finance, asset management, and revenue management, looking forward. The value of looking at the past is helping you to make better decisions going forward. But if you're so caught up in justifying last month's end of month report, rather than going, yeah, but what about tomorrow? What about 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30, 60, 90 if you're in M&E? You've got to be making sure you're focusing on how you're making better decisions looking forward. That's the guts of it. And the way you manage that, if I was to give you a simple answer to how do you do that, you need to build up a bit of trust. And that means when you can see something unpleasant going on, be very open, clear, and transparent on it, but also clear about what you're doing about it. Now, if you are keeping things to yourself and not communicating and just saying, get off my back, let me concentrate, other people feel like they're getting blindsided by things, then the trust gets eroded and you all end up chasing your tail. So it's a tough combination right now to have the human skills and to be on top of the business. But the rewards for the ones who are curious and enjoy the challenge and are well supported and can cultivate that. So the leaders on this call, you need to create and cultivate that environment around you where that trust and confidence and the focus on the right things looking forward can grow.
Brilliant. Deborah, anything to add?
Yes, to pick up on that, I think everything that Michael has said is absolutely right. And what our owners don't want are surprises. So many owners will be maybe quite highly geared in that they will have loans that they've got to pay back interest on and the principal back on. So that's looking at their cash flow. So from the owner's point of view, they've got an asset that's hopefully going to give them an annual income, and that annual income may be used to service the interest that they've got to pay on their finance and dividends to their shareholders. And they also want to see an asset that's going to increase in value over time as well. So those are their sort of, the principal things that that they're looking at. And our role when we're operating the property is really to make sure there are no surprises. So, as Michael has said, looking forward and, what are going to be the issues that are arising and how's that going to impact on the owner's cash flow ultimately. And I think, as Michael has said, it's about working very closely together, not just the operator with the owner, but also within the team as well. So breaking down the silos that I think both Olga and Michael have mentioned already, the silos between marketing and finance and revenue management. We really need to talk to each other because it's so important to make sure that we're all travelling in the same direction.
Brilliant. And talking about looking forward rather than looking back, so we know the challenges that we've got and some great advice of how to manage those. But Olga, if I can come to you here, it's how are we identifying new lines of revenue, new lines of income? How are we doing as an industry on doing that? Are we being very creative, or are we just doing what we've always done and hoping we'll get something different?
I think the industry has been very creative, especially if we're looking at food and beverage. I think there have been great ideas, and leaders in the industry are keeping really on top where the public is going, what attracts public, what is interesting, what is the new products that kind of catching our attention. Because we have seen, pop-up bars and restaurants coming up. We've seen events right now coming. Perfect example will be fireworks on New Year's Eve. That huge revenue generating, and I've seen some really creative ideas this year. In the past years, I've seen some, but this year kind of been the whole range of different things. So it's continuously changing. I don't think the industry is really looking back. Yes, we do. I don't think that actually many revenue managers are already looking at historical data. Yes, we may compare overall at the end of the month's results, but the booking windows, the lead time have changed so much that it's absolutely irrelevant. You can only look, and the business itself, the market segmentation changed. The rates have changed. So what we've done in the past doesn't particularly matter. Even from marketing point of view, there is no point recycling the same assets we've been doing last year because it's already public looking for something else. You need to be on top of your game to attract customers, the same regular guests, but also new customers as well. There is a lot about also to be, I like that revenue management is moving into asset management. It's something I'm curious and want to learn more, but because it's important to understand, yes, Michael will be talking back to you about it. I think it's important to understand what owners are looking for, because at the end of the day, they're looking to increase a value of their assets, whether it's adding keys and how it can be done, whether it's maybe adding additional floor up or down, maybe adding extra couple of rooms this and there, maybe changing M&E space because possibly it's no longer as popular, profitable as it used to be in the past. So it's about, and I think if operators will start kind of being, as Michael suggested, curious about it, then we will be almost kind of aligned with us, with stakeholders, and that collaboration probably will be a little bit more successful than it is now. But also, going back to your original question, what information we should be providing, it's how any different ideas can impact the business, all different aspects. Because if we have certain targets to achieve, what do we need to have in order to achieve those targets? Because very often, again, stakeholders or owners will not know that we may need to have X, Y, and Z, or if we are asked to cut the cost, yes, we can, but what impact it will have on a business. So it's a two-way conversation.
It's excellent. It's really good. And when we talked about, just reading some of the comments we've had coming through from some of the people on the call, and there's a lot of encouragement for cross-training, and I think you mentioned that earlier, Olga, about that cross-training between departments and helping to cut some of the labour costs. But I think it's also important that we include finance in that cross-training, and we encourage people to come into your departments and understand the jobs that you do, because harking back when I was in operations, you'd see that magic door that said finance, you might leave a pile of invoices there, not really know what else happened in that office. And I think that's a crying shame, because there's that's where lots of the magic happens. You know, the heart of the business is around cash, and cash is king, isn't it? So any ideas of what you've seen in your businesses and in your areas of work about how we get cross training happening, including in, you know, revenue management and finance?
I always say on my training courses, which are often for HODs, you know, really get yourself a friend in the finance department, and don't be afraid to go in and sit down and ask them to take you through what they do, and to help you with your part of the P&L, your department, and the overall P&L, because they, you know, that's their job, and they really want to share with you what they're doing and what it's all about. And I know sometimes it can seem, you know, sort of a bit scary going into the finance office and everyone's busy working around their spreadsheets, but the finance role has a really important role to play in providing a service to the business. It's not just about statutory accounting and producing regulatory reports. It's about providing information to run the business on a timely basis. And so part of the role of the finance team is to work with the different members of operations. And as I say, if you don't be afraid to go in and ask, because every business that I've come across has slightly different terms in the P&L. You know, we've got ADR, we've got average room rate, we've got average house rates, we've got all kinds of terms often for the same thing. So, you know, don't be afraid to go in and ask, and you know, get a bit of a run through of your P&L, and you know, get the finance team to help you to interpret those figures. But I think there's also a lot of data in the business that's unused as well. So probably all of our systems have got a lot more data in them than we're actually using. So I know on the one hand we don't want to be just bogged down with using lots of data all the time, but I think there's probably some scope for, you know, the reports that are there that could help you on a day-to-day basis, particularly on the food and beverage side. So whether we're using our current systems as much as possible, or whether something like Cafoodle or Kitchen Cut or those sorts of tools could just give you that extra insight and really help you to make decisions more quickly.
Deborah, it's like you've read the script. I mean, that's that's brilliant, because that leads us nicely on to the next area that we want to talk about, is technology, and how technology is helping revenue management, finance, forecasting better, and maybe more in a presentable, understandable format that, you know, the layman person can understand better within businesses. So you mentioned a couple of items there, Deborah. Can you do a bit of a deep dive on some of those and tell us how they're improving our worlds?
Well, if we take food and beverage, for example, I mean, that's the side of the business where the cost has just been increasing at really an unprecedented rate. And you can't produce your menus and hope to use them for 3 months and continue to achieve, you know, your target gross profit percentage. We have to keep going back and revisiting, you know, what GP are we getting from each of the dishes on our menu. And if you do that manually, that is quite a tedious task. So there are tools out there that can link your the purchases from your suppliers straight through to your standard costs, to your standard recipes, and updating your GP targets and so on, and also based on your sales mix. So the tools are there, and I think they can save you a lot of time. And give you a lot more insight really into, you know, which are your most profitable items, which items to focus on. We're seeing many food and beverage operators shrinking the menu down a little bit, but focusing on those items which are going to be the most profitable. You know, it's a really challenging time. Ingredients are changing in price all the time, and, you know, one week it's one thing and the next week it's another. So you really have to keep on top of it. So I think that's an area where it's well worth spending a bit of time and some investment.
And Olga, I think from a revenue management point of view, there's some technology as well to be used in room revenue, isn't there?
Absolutely, especially as we see more continuous trend for last minute decisions. Revenue management system are really a lifeline for us, because human brain is not able to process information 3 times a day, 365 days ahead, and spot all the trends, while systems can help us with that. I see revenue managers managing technology more and more. So our involvement with manipulating systems is much greater. We spend more time doing that. But so it's a kind of joining two best things, and helping us with some decisions as well. I was listening to Institute of Hospitality podcast about experience. What is more important, experience or knowledge? And often we would have the gut feeling, we'll spot the trends, we'll see something, but we will not be able to kind of explain it. While a system can give us a greater, better picture of how the specific trends are changing or pricing have been changing over the last 6 months. So that will help us to possibly support in our decision making, or if we go to the stakeholders with some propositions, suggestions, what we have already as a gut feeling, as experience, now we have the data to support that as well. And if we know that most of the people respond to the data much better, especially if it's in a visual kind of format. And yes, the last minute change, of course, that's I've kind of been surprised, and my colleagues as well, that sometimes we see changes in the pricing several times a day, and that price is significantly greater than what we normally would experience, even if it's increased we have seen in the last year. So whilst any revenue management system will take that personal maybe opinion or experience out of the equation. So it's just based on what is currently happening, and I think that is important to see. I think there would be, we use of revenue management system in the bedrooms is widespread. Probably most of the hotels have it already in place. Possibly maybe there is a better use across M&E or maybe in other departments, that maybe still some area of improvement could be done.
And in terms of training our teams, Michael, to use all this new technology, is it a challenge? Does it get picked up easy? Is there support there from the providers of this technology to embed it into businesses to get the most out of it? Is that quite costly to do? What's the situation there?
I think that if we're talking about some of the things that Olga's referring to with revenue management systems, we do quite a bit of work with different companies and different systems. And if I was to use sort of the analogy in a construction industry, if you have this amazing piece of equipment, but no one really knows how to use it, you can have spectacularly bad results, or it just sits there costing you money, adding zero value. And we see that with revenue management systems. People could buy the best, most expensive thing and then just override it all the time or ignore it all the time. That's not going to get you the best results. So these suppliers of pretty much any system, generally their training focuses on this is how to use the system. One of the big international chains has contracted with us recently to add a third stream to their training. So they have one stream of training, which is revenue management principles. Here's what RGI is, here's what RevPAR is, here's what GoPAR is, here's what distribution is, all of those key principles. Their second stream is the technical. Here's all the systems that we've got from a CRS, PMS, POS, RMS, pick an acronym ending in an S, all of those. That's fantastic to know technically how they work, what constraints there are. And the final one where they've come to us is, right, what's the human skills? How do we really make all of that insight and knowledge and algorithms and fabulous stuff, how do we actually turn that into real value for the business? And asset managers, if there's one phrase you'll hear from them again and again and again, how do I add value to this business? And I think all of us can pick up on that. I just wanted to rewind a bit to something we were talking about earlier as well, when we were talking about understanding between the different areas. If I was to give you just a quick example of that, through the pandemic, there's quite a few owners that have shifted from traditional fixed leases to either variable leases or hybrid leases. So now they have more of an interest in the operating profit of the business, whereas before they just got a rent check saying, thank you very much, you run the business, I don't care. Now, if you're on a variable lease or a hybrid lease, all of a sudden you need to know what's going on and what to expect coming forward. And for people like Olga and I on the revenue side, one of the things we sometimes find very difficult is how an owner or an asset manager seems to want different things from us over time as far as forecasting the business going forward. So if you have someone who's about to refinance a property, then probably they're wanting to have a different, more positive, optimistic, still realistic, but optimistic view going forward. Or if someone's just purchased a new property and they're carrying quite a bit of debt, they're going to want to say, do not forecast something and then fall short. My cash flow is absolutely crucial to me. Whatever you forecast, be absolutely certain you're going to deliver it. Whereas for us as revenue managers, our mindset is, where's the opportunity? We're pushing to go, how far can we take this thing? And that's a very different kind of a forecast. And your asset manager or your finance person is not going mad when they want one thing today and a different thing tomorrow. It's just, we need to understand what it is they're trying to achieve, who are the stakeholders, and how can we collaborate with that and feel like we have integrity with what we're doing. All of those forecasts are right. They're being used for a different purpose. It's like a forecast to the housekeeper who's trying to get their staffing right for next week. That's very different to a forecast for us as far as overbooking on one particular night for next week. And it doesn't help when you have a PMS that has a report in there called forecast, which is a load of rubbish. It's just business on the books. It's not a forecast at all. So yeah, understanding the systems is really important, but the training you'll get from the suppliers is technical. Here's how to use the system. They're assuming you have the foundational principles of understanding of finance or revenue or whatever it is. And there's not that many people out there, with a few exceptions, who can focus on the human skills. So there you go. Long answer to a short question.
No, it's good, because it's important to get all three of those aspects right. Otherwise, you're driving a Ferrari like a Mini. You know, it's you're not using the system to its full potential, and that is basically a question we have here from somebody who said, good data is an enabler of good decision making. So what sort of key data do the team feel is really valuable?
Can I start? The first word of that, good data, is the key bit. Understand the weaknesses in your data. Making decisions, and systems can never make decisions on bad data. For those of us who've worked in big chains, every couple of years they seem to want to change the market segmentation, which means your historical is just, anyway, we won't go down that path. But understand the limitations and the weaknesses of the data that you've got has to be the starting point in my mind.
Cool. All good, Deborah? Anything to add to that question?
It's probably what Michael, it's accurate, clean data. Something for the past dates is what we had already. We know that's already gone. That's what we had. Moving into the future, when we do forecast, then we need to be very clear what is actually, how much movement in that data, how much accuracy is there. And that goes back, a lot of it, I think, is working with the teams, making sure that we provide as clean and accurate data as we possibly can. And that goes back to training and sharing knowledge with team members and helping them to understand, why do we need to know what in the next 6 months, what are of all of those tentative groups, how many of them, what is the percentage that actually is likely to materialize? And if some of them will say 50%, okay, well, in our forecast, it might be 20%. So there is a lot to be said about the accuracy and cleanliness of data and the market segments as well. Because if we don't have their accurate information, then most likely we'll make wrong decisions. I think it's important to look into the business from all different angles and aspects, and customer service as well.
And then
that's
I think
really important.
On top of that, so you've got your past data, you've got your future data, and then you need the insight, the human side that Michael, I think, has picked up on earlier, and Olga as well. And continually looking outside at the economic environment as well, because Our systems are based on where we are at the moment and using the data from the past, and we know that the history now, we do have some issues with our historical data because of the changing market segments and patterns of demand. So looking at the environmental factors, the economic indicators as well, and you've got to really layer all of those things together to be able to then have that sort of overall view of where the business is going to go in the future.
Brilliant. We have another question here. What is your advice on ESG for hotels relating to energy cost savings, aging building and equipment, and hotel renovations?
That sounds like a whole new webinar all on its own. I don't think any of us is brave enough to try and answer everything about ESG, but I think one of the things that Deborah can probably expand on for us, the new USALI will be coming out at some point. One of the reasons it's taken quite a while for it to come out is they're trying to incorporate some of the ESG elements into USALI looking forward. And they're also moving USALI to being online rather than buying a big blue book like that one there. And I think that makes sense once you're getting involved in areas like ESG, because it is something that is changing. It's having to change over time. So the first thing I'd say about that is keep yourself up to date and well informed on webinars that cover that topic, but also make sure you're talking to people who really understand the hospitality side of it. Don't get drawn into what the airlines are doing, because they're playing with a very different situation to what we are. Sorry, Deborah, I should have let you get onto the USALI story.
Well, I think for sure we're going to hear a lot more about ESG in the coming year. As Michael has said, yes, the USALI is being updated and there's more of a focus on the whole utilities and wastage side of reporting. We already have a statutory requirement for obviously the much larger companies to be reporting within their annual report on carbon footprint and emissions and so on. But that's going to filter really right across the whole of the industry, because ultimately in the real estate industry, the value of the property is going to be impacted by the overall ESG profile of that investment. And I think at the moment we've got quite a long way to go in terms of understanding how that's going to impact on the hospitality industry. But as Michael said, there's lots of information coming out all the time, and certainly it's something in my business that we're working with a variety of providers to be able to develop some courses for the industry, because I think at the moment it's an area that's not well understood in terms of the implications, but we have definitely got to move up a gear in terms of our understanding and implementation.
Olga, can I ask you what you're seeing with the corporate rate collections and what the big international corporates are demanding from an ESG side?
Sorry, could you say that again, Michael?
The corporate rate collections. So when we're wanting to get business with Sky or someone like that, they have a net zero by 2030 target for them as a company. So I'm wondering what Olga's seeing in the corporate rate solicitation process in relation to ESG. What are our clients demanding of us in the corporate world? Are you seeing much of that, Olga?
Not to the point that it's impacting the business.
Right.
However, it will be.
Yeah.
And also, this is where the area, yes, it's not, hoteliers may be a little bit kind of in the back foot here, but this is the area we can make improve the value of the assets. And it has to be forward thinking. It has to be, yes, it may be very costly right now. However, if it adds value and it will bring us business in the future and increase the value of the assets, then it's something that hotels, I believe, will be spending more time and money looking to and implementing, as Deborah mentioned.
Yeah, certainly we're seeing more and more customers for the hospitality industry requesting to see that in the proposal document. So, what's your strategy in this area? But I think sometimes it's a question, but what sort of level of depth actually do they want, back in return. We've got 3 levels of measurement: Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. And while Scope 1 and 2 are becoming clearer in terms of how to be able to communicate that, I mean, Scope 3, there's still a lot of work to do in terms of looking at your supply chain and how you're going to capture that data. But the accounting profession is doing a huge amount of work in terms of producing tools and guidance on how to do that. So I think we'll see a lot more during the course of 2023 to help us in that area.
Excellent. One last question from the listeners is, I'm really interested in getting into revenue management. I currently work as a hospitality team leader and supervisor. So how best to make the transition into finance?
Into finance or into revenue?
What would your advice be?
For
I can
revenue
start on
or
this.
for finance?
Should we go for revenue management first and then finance?
Yeah, revenue management first.
Okay.
It's important, I think, to work in different aspects of the business. So I progressed within my career from F&B, reservations, group reservations, assistant manager, and so on and so forth. So I have kind of experience of what it actually means to be in reservations department, how it is working with customers, etc. So there is a quite gradual progression that can be. That's how I got into developing into revenue manager and then director. Training courses, I think there is a huge value right now available, paid and free courses. It's about also improving, obviously increasing your knowledge and expertise in that area if that's what interests you.
Cool. And from a finance point of view?
So from a finance point of view, there's a range of options out there. So HOSPA, of course, has a range of finance courses that lead into accreditation from CIMA, which is the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. Another route is AAT, which is the Association of Accounting Technicians, which will also then take you into the various chartered qualifications as well. I think the industry is really now requiring for you to qualify in accountancy if you follow a career in that direction. And I think if you're thinking of moving into finance, spend some time working in the finance department, find out, from working with them whether it's really for you. And then there are lots of ways to study. So you can study part-time, in the evenings, day release. There are lots of options in terms of how to get into the finance industry. And you might also want to consider what your long-term aims are. So qualifications like CIMA, AAT are portable. You can take them to other industries. It means you can dip into other industries, but hopefully come back to hospitality. So you really think about your long-term career aims.
Excellent.
I think one of the things I can add to that, many of the larger organisations, coming back to Deborah's first point when we started this webinar, many of the larger organisations have reduced their headcount in the centralised functions like finance. They centralised a lot and they reduced the numbers of people, and they had a lot more systems and automation. So there is an expectation that hoteliers understand better what's going on, because they might not have a whole finance team down the end of the corridor anymore. There might just be one person, or it might be someone in a centralised location. And when I say larger organisations, I'm even seeing that in portfolios of 3 hotels. They won't have a finance team in each hotel. They'll now have one finance team that takes care of the 3. So for you, the opportunity to learn more and be more informed, more self-reliant, but also able to collaborate with those professionals who you're partnering with is really, really crucial. So the professional development side, absolutely key. I totally agree with both of the other guys on that. But also the connections with people. I think all 3 of us have said that all the way along. Who are the people who you can partner with and collaborate with?
Perfect. That's really good. Great way to end. So that's all the questions we've had from our attendees today. Just conscious of the time. So before we wrap up, Just very quickly, one recommendation from each of you, if you wouldn't mind, about where somebody can go and get more information, where they might be able to go and find some training in this subject, whether it's a podcast, a book, whatever it might be. So let's go around the other way this time. And if I can start with you, Michael, please.
Yeah, I'd say the professional development, there's plenty of great stuff. For us at Hosper, we can certainly give you those skills in the hospitality industry. But one of the things I'm really passionate about and what my business focuses on a lot, and I know Deborah does as well with her business, that professional development is great, but make sure you're always challenging yourself to say, right, how am I going to apply that? And that applies to this webinar as much as any other professional development you're doing. Right, we've had some interesting conversations. So what? So what are you going to do? Just give me one thing where you can go away and say, that's something I'm going to do, or that's something I'm curious about, I'm going to look into, get a better understanding of, and then make some decisions or talk to some people about how can I improve what I'm doing based on that discussion. So challenge yourself to apply the things you're thinking about and you're hearing people talk about. That'll be the big one from me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael, for some great advice. And Olga?
I would advise to join Institute of Hospitality for those who have not joined yet, and see it as an investment. Sometimes it's difficult. I remember when I was in a junior roles at the beginning of my career, it seemed difficult maybe to put ROI to that investment that you put into yourself. But at the end of the day, I think if you add some targets, i.e. how many new connections I will make, how many new conferences I will attend, what new will I learn, it's very easy to see actually that return on investment very quickly coming back. And what I've experienced throughout my career is the Institute offers so much right now in terms of learning facilities. It's webinars, it's conferences, events, podcasts, etc. So I see it as a huge opportunity, really. So it's as much time as you have, you can all invest there. And usually it opens the doors to new kind of either new roles or new organizations, and it's the network that is a key. And the industry is very small, we all know that, but we all want to support and help each other. So I see it as that is a source of information that I would recommend to everyone to take advantage of.
Brilliant. Thank you, Olga. Great ambassador. Thank you. And Deborah.
Thank you, Sam. So a couple of things, if I may. First, to echo Olga's recommendation, join the IoH. It's an amazing organisation. Just have a look at the website. There's so many events going on and different activities, all the range of professional development resources as well. And the industry, the hospitality industry, is very innovative. Just look at how we've evolved during the last couple of years. And we're very open about that. So, you know, it's not a secret in terms of how the industry has evolved. So go along to events and talk to people, and you'll get their ROI very quickly, because the event itself, but also the chance to network and share ideas with people as well. In my own business, we have lots going on. So we have a range of courses available in hospitality finance, regular webinar program, and some online resources that you can subscribe to as well. So do have a chat to us, particularly if you're looking at how you want to take your career forward, and we can offer you some advice in that area.
Excellent, brilliant. Thank you ever so much, and a really positive way to end what started off to be quite a serious subject in terms of, well, this is a serious subject. We started off quite doom and gloom about rising costs, and we've ended quite positive, which is really good. So thank you, Michael, Olga, and Deborah, for your time, expertise. We are bang on time, so that is really good news as well. So just before we go, just to remind everybody to count this hour as a CPD hour on your CPD portal, and just to remind everybody that the next IoH virtual event is on the 12th of January, this Thursday. It's IoH in conversation with our friends at Umbrella Insights, and then our next in-person event is Above and Beyond at the Shangri-La on the 30th of January. from 6 p.m. In collaboration with Plan Day, where we'll be talking about well-being. So very worth looking. But the Institute's website is full of events over the next few weeks and months. So take a look at that. Thank you again. Thank you for everybody for dialing in and listening. And we wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.